Alright, hello everybody, welcome to the patch 13.6 rundown for amateur play. My name is Quintic, and today I'll be using my system of predictive criteria that I've been developing to help me assess the probable impact of the patch on all levels of amateur competition, with a special emphasis on like the platinum, gold, diamond area, the lesser skilled brackets that are underserved by other patch note shows. If you're watching this about a week after release on YouTube, please check the comments down below, just in case we are updating our predictions. And if you are receiving this video like on YouTube too late for your own competition, then don't forget that I do always stream these on Twitch, right? Now, that being said, sorry to the VAS players, the BOL Gold players, the fact that we are recording this so late, everybody in a Wednesday league is not going to be able to profit, but sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles, right? Hello, Karibo. Hellfire, I'm super happy to hear that it was 14 hours. Like, I love, like, once in a while just sleeping really long hours. It feels super great. Super, super great. Okay, so this patch is pretty tiny in terms of champion changes, but there are a lot of potentially impactful systemic updates, which will take like a little bit more thought. And as we know, systemic updates are usually the things that actually cause changes to how we should play the game. So let's start with the champions and see how it goes. Right. Okay, first of all, Milio is releasing this patch. As usual, new champion or rework or whatever. I'm not going to talk too much about them during the patch note show. Day 1 Milio is out now if you want to understand a little more about how he works. My initial impression on his power level is that it's not excessively high, but that he is baseline useful, right? He has an AoE cleanse. He doesn't need to be optimized around too intensely. He does have some very meaningful weaknesses to hyper poke, not a super impactful lane phase, scales into a lot of relevance, so I'm expecting him to be useful for amateur competition, especially levels of play where lane phases aren't being punished super hard, so he's probably going to be like a monster in IBS, but I'm not expecting him to like take over the game or anything, right? So you don't need to like immediately jump on him, add him to your pool, unless you're excited to play him. He's not super ridiculous at all. I think he sucks in solo queue, to be honest. Okay, Ashe is getting a small secondary update to follow up her last set of changes. She did lose a pretty major chunk of win rate on the last patch after losing 20 seconds off her rank 1 R cooldown, right? And that obviously did impact AD carry Ashe, and we predicted that the 6-second duration on Q would be nice, but not like super extreme, and we predicted that, the poke damage wouldn't do too much to her. And I do think support Ashe is in a reasonable spot, and AD carry Ashe is in a reasonable spot. Like, you can play both, neither are oppressive anymore. She's not dominating bans. Now what they're doing is they're just increasing the damage of her frost shots by 5%, a flat 5%. Well, that's a DPS increase to a DPS champion. Ashe is a champion with low DPS, so I now have to wonder, like we've never considered a champion with very low DPS gaining DPS, really. That's not something that our criteria are, like, tuned for. Conventionally, I would say, like, neat, slightly stronger, not really a big deal. Does it matter for Ashe? Does it matter for Ashe? Does it matter for Ashe? Probably not. Yeah, I'm not going to overthink it. Small DPS change to a DPS champion usually results in virtually no changes to pick conditions, and so we will make that prediction for Ashe. Aurelion Sol is getting a significantly more impactful suite of changes than the last one. So you're going to start to hear some top-level talk about Aurelion Sol being kind of overrated. Top-level analysts are definitely saying, like, he's too exploitable in the early game. Like, yes, of course he scales into a full neutralizing monster. He is a control menace, but counterplay is developing up there. But that's up there, and we're down here. And down here, Aurelion Sol is an absolute monster, because we're not punishing him very well, right? And he is scaling, and he is neutralizing, and he absolutely, like, stomps uncoordinated pushes, right? So what are they doing to him this time? They are slightly tapping down the magic damage that scales off level. They are slightly tapping down the burst damage, so that's 10 per second here. That's like, or is this like a tick over 1 second, like ticks over 1 second? Or hold on, let me get a little more specific. Aurelion Sol. How do we phrase this? How is this represented? Magic damage per tick. Okay, well, yes. If magic damage per tick is 10, and we're now expressing this as going up to 80. 8 to 10. Okay. This is magic damage per second. He's losing 10 magic damage per second. He's losing 10 damage on a burst, and therefore that's 20 magic damage per second. That is a small DPS change on its own, would not make a significant difference. Singularity, the cooldown is no longer decreasing, which should make some like marginal changes in the lane phase when we're like putting 3 points into this ability in some greedy matchups, right? I suppose this means he's struggling a little more to neutralize like some mid-game, or he's not going to be like quite as effective at like bouncing between waves and farming them both, like because Aurelion Sol's not a champion who values haste very highly, so this cooldown would stick, I suppose. Gonna have to think about that one a little more deeply. And the stun duration and knock-up duration have both gone down on Falling Star Sky's Descent, but they rolled back a change that they were considering making, which was Sky's Descent is unlocked at 100 Stardust, not 75. Which would have actually made a pretty significant difference in how often Aurelion Sol can make big plays. Okay, so last patch they hit Aurelion Sol's EHP, so minus 200 effective HP at level 16, which made it harder for him to make like outright dive plays. They hit his damage a little bit, didn't really matter. They're hitting his damage a little bit now, doesn't matter, might matter a little bit compounding, but DPS champ. This I'm struggling to see as like a damning nerf for generalist levels of play. Now that this is a 1 second stun, you're not guaranteed a burst during CC when you factor in tenacity, which could be a big deal if the enemy has mobility, right? Chat, do you guys think I'm missing something about the impact of this change? Because, like, am I missing something about how... Let me think. Systems. IOX predictors. Cooldowns. Output. Champion who does not cast their spells off CD will be significantly less affected by a CD change. Aurelion Sol does like casting his spells off CD. Following types are most affected by cooldown or duration changes. Poke spells, core personal defenses, core DPS HPS, in-combat spammable mobility, catcher protective utility, window limiting ultimates on aggro champs, spells that deal 100% uptime. Technically that's this, but... Okay, look, the impact of this is marginal changes in Stardust optimization. In regular amateur play, that should be irrelevant, right? So that should be irrelevant. This is reasonably small. This is reasonably small. Top level, they're developing counterplay to Asol and think he's very exploitable at early levels. Down here, he's still oppressive. I suppose, like, I would personally predict, like, minor-ish impact, like... when we see a champion receiving nerfs to multiple distinct aspects at once, that usually implies that the champion does become slightly weaker, does maybe drop down like 1 tier in a tier list, that sort of thing, right? But Aurelion Sol is disproportionately overperforming in amateur play. or at least, but Aurelion Sol is disproportionately overperforming in like moderate level solo queue, which does translate to a degree to amateur. I don't know. Predictors say he's slightly weaker. Counterplay being developed at top level says he's weaker than we think he is. However, I would have to conclude that this isn't like huge, like earth-shattering, pool-changing levels of nerf. If you have spent all of your time on current ASOL and he's become your comfort pick, you may as well continue playing him. I would be surprised if anybody has played so much of him that he got to that point, though, I guess. Is that a fair conclusion? I think that's a fair conclusion. Obviously slightly weaker, not weak enough to make any dramatic strategic decisions for amateur play. That's a good one. Okay, Dr. Mundo. Dr. Mundo had like one period early in the year where he was like stupid busted just because he was doing entirely too much damage and getting through the jungle like entirely too fast, which was really funny. And I'm going to have to remind myself what they did to him. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. So, what they did to Mundo is they reduced his base health by 40. They reduced his armor growth. They reduced his bonus attack damage. And it no longer deals more damage to monsters than intended. It hit his clear speed. I didn't think that looked hugely power impacting. By solo queue metrics alone, it was hugely power impacting. I didn't think like he lost about like 150 EHP in the mid game. That matters. I had a poor predictor for durability. It matters a lot. Plus, this was a double dip nerf where he lost damage from this and then lost further damage from this. So Mundo, because he's the type of champion that like mainly in combination with the Q nerfs earlier. What were the Q nerfs earlier? Yeah, that's right. And they also tried to hit him previously, but that one didn't matter either. But in combination, that's right. That's right. That's right. Thank you, Karibo. Thank you. So basically, I suppose what happened to Mundo then is he stopped doing blatantly overpowered levels of damage. At the same time, when it became like really awkward to max Q, everything got like a little bit expensive, right? Became harder for him to top lane, became less practical for him to jungle. At the same time, he was kind of a Heartsteel user, and he was like overpowered at the period where we didn't really understand Heartsteel's counterplay very well yet. Right? So what have we got? We've got a stat stick champion who needs to be able to like stat stick you, who needs to be able to just overwhelm you without being susceptible to tank busters. And we have Kraken Slayer as the best AD carry mythic right now. AD carries are very, very strong. Definitely not implying that it's Mundo's meta, right? And let me just remind myself of a little bit more. Dr. Mundo. It's Mundo's value. Sorry, I'm just reminding him. I'm comparing him to Garen in my head. He is a tank who doesn't really do anything beyond damage. So, what did they do to him, right? Health regeneration is increased, okay. Health regeneration scaling is decreased. So this compensates for that more expensive Q, like to a degree that people were talking about. So it's like a little less punishing too with your Q. You're not actively killing yourself by trying to poke and failing, right? Heart Zapper recast timer is actually a pretty big deal because like that first half second is like when it's at its strongest, right? So you can just tap it, mitigate all the damage, heal up a bunch immediately. That's probably what I would read as just a quality of life, but it is objectively power impacting. And damage to jungle monsters on Blunt Force Trauma up here. Higher. Now, Oh, this champion's role in a team composition is awkward. Really should stop buffing the damage to jungle monsters on E. Yeah, me too. I mean, okay, so and remind ourselves too. Mundo's changes shifted his identity a little more towards scaling, so he's not as pure a skirmish aggro champion. I mean, this is just weird. No, he's getting a dramatic, like he's getting an increase to his early game clear speed to enable him to play out like aggro strats from the jungle a little more effectively, like skirmish aggro stuff. I suppose the new state of the jungle lets him get some invades off, and that could be kind of threatening. I mean, I guess so, but Jungle Mundo doesn't properly take advantage of Mundo's new scaling identity. This base health regeneration is like a minor buff to top lane Mundo and does address some of his problems that we've been talking about. I think this has to be like a marginal increase to power. That's I mean, yeah. This doesn't unlock more ease of execution for Mundo in like mid-game team compositions. This doesn't unlock a dramatic amount of extra laning power. This doesn't solve Jungle Mundo's access to scaling issues. Like AD carries are still strong. Kraken Slayer is still strong. No reason to add Mundo to your pool. No reason to drop him from your pool. Very negligible changes for our purposes. Right. Wow, this patch has really not done very much so far. This is, I see. Galio. So, they're describing Galio. What's up? Hi, Paradox. First Melio game? Awesome. How does he feel for you? I think he's pretty weak early, but this is supposed to be MSI patch. That's why they're light on things. If this is supposed to be the MSI patch, then they don't want to change much from 13.5. And 13.5 was reasonably healthy, so why fix what isn't broken, right? So they're saying that after the durability update, Galio's damage is too low, Galio's durability is too low, and that's a little unfortunate, right? Yeah, I mean, Galio in amateur play still gets inherent value from the Galio Camille combo, which people still struggle to play around. So it's not like he's disappeared from that, like, our level of competition. But you know, Galio's the type of champion that when he's strong, he's everywhere, and he's nowhere, so you know. What is he getting? So, the magic damage reduction is going up 5% at all ranks, and the ratio is going up by 4% per 100 bonus magic resistance. It is still kind of hard to get some magic resistance, but, you know, splash a Negatron Cloak in here, you're getting now plus 6% rather than plus 4%. It's a very marginal buff, but, you know, fine. That's fine. Ultimately, that's plus 7% reduction on Negatron Cloak, if you were ever buying that. You can factor in an Abyssal Mask, see what happens. Yeah. Physical damage reduction is going up proportionately, like, it's plus 2.5%. It's the same, it's exactly half the value of this. And the Justice Punch is up, or down 1 second per rank. Now, much like Kiana before him, this becoming close, like, this is now 1 second off of in-combat spammable mobility, which is a very funny concept, which is a lot more access to some CC, which if you can find some haste builds for Galio like that, should be pretty good. Actually, that causes me to wonder whether Cosmic Drive is a good item for him, because he would qualify as a utility champion. He would value, like, the raw haste stat stick. I wonder if, in conjunction with that change, Galio is actually quite a bit more of an appealing pick. I would imagine in solo queue, Galio struggles just because he is so much of a 2v2 champion, like a very pure play with your team champion. So that said, nothing wrong with him in comp play right now. I think Excuse me. I think, again, this is very minor. This is approaching major. We might have some new builds to check out. Very slightly stronger. Cool. Gallia is a bit more of an appealing pick. I wouldn't underrate this. I wouldn't overrate this. And I just have to give that unsatisfying, like, neat conclusion again. Like, ugh. Talon is receiving some buffs. Talon also got some buffs rolled back. I'm noticing there was a ratio increase on the PvE that did not make it through. I think that's honestly fair. Talon is gaining slightly more access to mana. I think that probably does not impact his ability to play out a sequence dramatically on a plus 23. But alas, that's fine. Blade's End, the damage is going up 5 early ranks, up 25 at 18, plus a 10% AD ratio. That's actually a pretty meaningful damage increase, no? On burst champions, our threshold for like early mid game is like 40 damage increase, and this alone obviously does not hit that, but you know, a plus 10% increase to AD. Okay, yeah. As a whole, this doesn't hit that 40. The 40 becomes less necessary. Like, this doesn't hit our early 40 threshold for burst champions getting burst damage. That threshold becomes less important later on. It is a nice small damage increase. This is a nice small increase to the availability of your rake. These changes seem tailored for mid lane Talon more so than jungle Talon, given how much of it is mana. How much of that really impacts his ability to play in a sequence? It's noticeable damage. It's noticeable damage in the late game. Mid to late game. It's noticeable damage mid to late, right? Plus 25, good. Plus 10%, good. Talon currently struggles to interact with the minion wave in oppressive mid lane matchups. Okay, hang on. What does this practically do? -5 plus 25. Oh, not that. Let's look at the numbers more carefully. Let's see what it's doing. Paradox. Melia feels incredibly reactive. You're more... Yeah, he's very, 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 very reactive. My god, he's a reactive champ. Like, yeah, that champion has one proactive thing he can do, and it is like one trading stance all in. Right? A single trading stance all in. Wait, what am I doing looking up the mana cost? It's given to me right here. Yeah, but I would argue Renata has a lot more proactive windows. Having a hook and all, you know? Okay, so Talon is given, like, an extra half of a W in terms of raw numbers, not factoring his regen. Could unlock him to finish a sequence. Could have implications for him getting out of lane. We have a non-threshold increase to damage in the early game, but, of course, this damage does start to add up as the game goes on. I would again say relatively small but power impacting if you're a Talon player or an old Talon player. Sure, have fun, enjoy. We have seen literally nothing that should change anybody's pools so far. Except maybe this. But Melia's ratios are terrible for healing. Does he really need long fights to proc Moonstone? So, I mean, the problem is his cooldowns are too long to keep Moonstone going over a long fight, but Moonstone stays active during the entire duration of his W. Right? I think Shurelya's is better on him personally. I think Moonstone angles exist, but I mean, the champ's Shurelya synergy is absolutely ridiculous. Everything procs Shurelya's so often. There's a trough. If you're not full maxing W early, there is definitely a healing trough. It's really good at like level 1, 2, 3. It's kind of poor at like 6, 7, because you usually want to put 3 points into your E, and then it starts to get good again at like 8, 9 mid game. I've been doing 3E into W. Q is my 1-point wonder just because Q creates a lot of power troughs if you invest into it. There are like 2 Q angles. Here, hold on. There we go. All the answers are in there. Okay, here's a change. Here's the change. Okay. Vayne is getting quite a lot of buffs. Let's actually read the context this time. Vayne's been struggling in all skill brackets. Her passive has not stood the test of time against more mobile champions. Give her more chase potential, allow her to use Q more defensively. We're giving Vayne a bit more AD scaling on her Q to support more AD-focused builds, which have been weak since critical strike chance was removed from Vayne's Q. We want to curb her potential power in the top lane, so we're bringing down % health damage. Okay, what is Vayne getting? Vayne is getting a 15 flat increase to her bonus movement speed towards enemy champions. I have to double check something here. There's an interaction with her ultimate on the passive, and I want to see how it's worded, how it works exactly. Doubling Night Hunter's bonus. Aha! So this is going from 30 to 45, but that also means that when your ult is active, instead of gaining 60 flat movement speed, you are gaining 90 flat movement speed. So that's a very significant increase to Vayne's chase down potential, right? Q, bonus physical damage, is immediately up 15% AD at rank 1, then goes up to 115% AD, up from 80, which is also hugely significant. Obviously, Vayne is a champion who historically has synergized with on-hits, right? Ginsu's has been, on paper, pretty good. Old ult was 90. No, old ult doubles Night Hunter's duration. Or doubles Night Hunter's value, right? Oh, wait, what the fuck? Wait, it used to triple? The wiki changed the wording without... Okay, let's take it back from the top. Okay. Vayne is gaining 15 bonus movement speed flat. Apparently, we got it wrong. The ultimate value has not changed. It was 90 before. It used to triple. Now it only doubles. It's still 90. Okay, so that's not as big a buff as we initially read, but, 15 flat for free in Chase Down... We'll take those, right? Mobile champions have lived and died by 5 movement speed, especially if they were melee, but this is a ranged chase down champion too, right? So that's that's big, right? Even though it's not as big as we thought. Tumble damage increased significantly, plus 15% AD at early ranks. 80, 90, 100, 110, plus 35% AD at high ranks, which is actually a pretty big deal for opting into higher AD crit builds, for opting into earlier IE, for going away from, the Ginsu's routes, which is nice because, Ginsu's is an excellent item, right? Ginsu's is a strong item, but Ginsu's is best when you're speccing entirely into on-hits, and, was Vayne really getting a lot of value from, early Bork, Bork Ginsu's shield bow or something like that, Wits End Ginsu's or something like that. Ginsu's was awkward to splash in. Having greater AD ratios will make it better to go into the crit. This is massive. This is huge. The empowered attack duration going down to 3 seconds, you only have 3 seconds to proc it, means that Q goes on cooldown faster when you don't attack, which is an increase to safety, which is... you can use this defensively a lot more easily now. You can use this to chase down without catching people a lot more easily now. This is a major increase to Vayne's out-of-combat mobility. And then we have an early increase to the % max health damage, which eventually, decreases. So it's more of an incentive to max Q first rather than W. And I think we'll take that incentive when, Q looks like this with this AD ratio. The Q changes make it nearly as strong or stronger than a Draven Axe. Oh, look at that. Yeah, let's actually... That's a good point. Let's compare that. That's a lovely... Bonus physical damage. Okay, so because, yeah. Actually, let's open them both simultaneously. Duplicate, back. Obviously, Vayne's doesn't have the flat damage that Draven's has, which is, like, very good, right? But, yep, okay. You're right. Tumble doesn't have the extra flat damage, but Tumble has the exact same ratios as Draven's Axe. And we know how well Draven likes to... Oh my god, is Essence Reaver Vayne real? That's funny. Probably not, but that's funny. Oh, this is making some... Oh my god. Oh, it is total. Oh, it is total. Oh, it's total. Oh, it's total. Ah! Ah! Hailfire's catching all of the extra little details that I'm missing. Thank you. I appreciate it. So we were kind of making fun of this patch a little bit for having very, very low impact changes, but this one is... this one's big. Okay, I'm on record saying that I think Vayne is just a top laner right now. This technically does not solve some of Vayne AD Carry's issues. Like, you still have very poor wave control. You still have, I mean, now that I think about it, do you still have poor early skirmishing? Do you still have poor early skirmishing? Huh. I mean, needless to say, Vayne Top is the one that really gets the buffs. Like, this is huge for Vayne Top. This is huge for bullying melees. This is huge for bullying everybody. This is huge for bullying people early. You don't need to invest into it as much, right? Like, Vayne Top is giga buffed, I think. I'm still a little bit hesitant to jump on the Vayne AD Carry train, despite this being basically a Draven Axe. Actually, despite this being basically a Draven Axe. Well, Okay, if this is basically a Draven Axe now... Yeah, but Vayne bot lane would take like 8 to 10 minutes to get to that point, and she can be absolutely abused before that, so I don't want to factor it in too much for Vayne AD Carry viability. I don't want to overreact to it, if that's fair. Just trying to think. Well, in amateur play, we're pretty bad at laning. Like, diamond level's a bit more stable, but, like, platinum laning is bad, gold laning is bad, IBS laning is atrocious. Theoretical Vayne bot lane, I think I would struggle to imagine becoming much, much better, but it is better. But maybe this is a Samira situation where, like, you just get to use her inappropriately. I'll say it this way. If your team plays around bot lane a lot and skirmishes around bot lane a lot, and you have, I would imagine, like, I mean, I would imagine to properly capitalize on this and not get tagged by Vayne AD Carry's weaknesses, I think you would have to have, like, a very aggressive melee support style player. If you are that kind of team, I think Vayne AD Carry might be a legitimate option for you, like, just to dirty up the game, get a snowball going, like, scale into a monster, like, cover her in divers so she's not being targeted as much, right? I think in that case, if you are a team like that, and you do enjoy playing Vayne, maybe you can start to reintroduce Vayne to your pool a little bit. That is more speculative. That is more like maybe our level of play is bad. I don't think theoretical Vayne bot lane is huge. Top lane is the real winner. God, look out for top lane Vayne. Oh, jeez. It makes the very... I understand that, but we have to... all Vayne would be stronger the same way, right? All Vayne would be stronger the same way, like, regardless of role that affects Vayne. So I'm just trying to check her against bot lane's weaknesses before factoring that in. Right. Okay, Veigar. Veigar, once he got his range buffs, I thought, good for him, poorly supported champion. And I really have to learn to just accept that sometimes a champion's kit can just be really, really, really good, and even poorly supported by systems, they can become a monster if buffed the right way. So Veigar gaining range made him very good in the bot lane, where he was not exposed to enemy marksmen. Having 1050 range against champions that generally have, 800, 900 on skill shots at best, did quite a lot. They're making Veigar a lot squishier. Base armor 18. Last time his armor got reduced, it became hard to run Veigar AD carry. Mid lane was less affected. Base health minus 25. I mean, 25 doesn't get us into any lethal windows, but like this, let's check the actual values. Close this Draven. Okay. Veigar has 550 base health, and it is going to... No, it started at 575. That's right, because I'm late, the wiki is already more than edited. Right? HP per level remains at 108. The resistance has gone from 21 to 18. 21 armor to 18 armor. That's pretty bad. And the armor per level stays at 5.2. Well, this is rounding to minus 50 effective HP at level 1, which is pretty significant for all-in windows. And it doesn't really get much. Yeah, it does get worse than that as time goes on. It really does get worse than that. Huh. Mental math. It goes up to like a loss of 120 HP at level 18. That's a pretty big decrease. Oh no, I forgot to save my... Yeah, lose 46 here, lose 88 here. At level 16, we're losing 113. At level 18, we're losing like 120, right? So a non-negligible loss of durability for Veigar, which can make it significantly riskier to play into matchups that can break his zone, which would be like aggro 80 carry plus engage support, if they can get past the cage, right? That is a significant increase in threat, right? Dark matter is a oh dear, oh no. Okay, minus 15 at rank 1 plus 5 at rank 5. Veigar had a little property where you would actually invest like 2 points into W for wave clear and then go Emax. I think that now becomes mandatory to do. I think you have to. I don't think you stop maxing E second, but I think that W second, that 2-point W tech probably becomes mandatory. So I don't think this affects Veigar players who like really understand the champion too much. I think this does and makes him harder to blind pick for the bot lane. Although I do not think this makes a difference when you're playing like scaling enchanter matchups, like handshaking it at all, right? So higher risk to Veigar. He is weaker. He is harder to blind pick, but Veigar is at his best when you're not blind picking him anyway. So do with that information what you will. Oh, that's a lot. Yeah, okay. So Yumi's broken, and we know she's broken, and now they're trying to nerf her. Ally on hit damage, the AP ratio is going down. So, I was telling everybody that Yumi's AP ratio sucked. This is the only one I actually forgot about, and this was unreasonably high for an on hit. Although people were telling me AP Yumi was good for the poke alone, and I was saying, no, it's not. That's an item proc. That's a dopamine hit. That's all base damage. Like, it's not the AP. I'm getting sidetracked. This is a reasonable nerf. It really says, stop building AP, you fucks. Cooldown is now standardized at all ranks, so there's less of an incentive to max it. The mana cost is going up at high ranks, so it is a little more punishing to just throw it out. The missile speed down, and missile range down, so it is harder to just poke. I think that's fair. I think limiting Yumi's output like a little bit in terms of damage is fair. I don't think this actually dramatically affects the damage Yumi builds that we did discover, which was Mandate Rush. I didn't know about that when I released a Day 1 Yumi. The Mandate Rush will be weaker as a whole, but, Yumi has other strengths, and she will be fine. Like, she's still, just like the old Yumi, you hit one aspect of her, and she's got a million others that are, like, just as good, right? R is still amazing. It still has quite a lot. I mean, let's actually see what the healing does. It's fair that the resistances are gone. I don't mind that. This was ridiculously overwhelming. Overheal shield duration, fair, so they're just trying to get you to use this a little more in combat, but the value is unaffected, and this will still be a very good spell. Still has a lot of value with the on-hit, still has a lot of value with the on-hit healing, still has a lot of value with the shielding, the summoner spells. She's still a good champion. But maybe finally people will stop flooding the comments of Day 1 Yumi saying AP Yumi is like so good, and it's not dead, because it's dead. It's really dead. Stop building it. Don't do it. If you must, build Mandate. I would still imagine that, like, okay, you can interpret this as, yes, poke champion, losing poke damage, always an impactful nerf. However, other properties leave Yumi fine. That's how I interpret the change. I would probably be a little surprised if she was still blatantly overpowered now that we removed this. But she's still going to be quite good. And she's still going to be unpleasant to play into, so... Okay, so now that, they just put they just backloaded all of the champion changes that really matter into this patch note. So we finally got some stuff that we care about that might actually change pick conditions. Now let's talk about the systems. Although I'm getting a lot of DMs. 1 second. Okay, nothing too crazy. And some things never change. True. Okay. So we're starting with a Bloodthirster nerf, and a Bloodthirster nerf is very fair. I didn't know what to make of this item immediately after it got reworked, but about a patch after that change, I finally sat down, did my study on standard marksman itemization, and what I discovered is that shield bow is pretty much irrelevant while this item is in the game, in its current state, right? Bloodthirster is amazing. It's a really good rush on half-casters. It's a really good second item, like for the generic marksman, in situations where it would be worth it to delay your capstone. And it's a really good third item on everyone, right? It's just always really good. And why is it really good? Well, the shield... let me actually just pull up my notes right here. Systems. Standard marksman itemization. Bloodthirster. Bloodthirster is the only defensive legendary available to marksman that is viable to purchase on curve. What is on curve? That's within, like, the first 3 that sets up, like, your capstone, right? So they are removing 80... They're removing... I'm not structuring my thoughts very well. Give me a second. Sorry, I apologize. Actually, I have to pull them both up anyway. So take a look at shield bow, right? 50 AD, 20% attack speed, 20% crit, 7% lifesteal. And if you would take damage that would reduce you below 30%, you gain this 250 to 630 shield. Right? And you gain some bonus AD. Bloodthirster obviously has a smaller shield, but it is a shield that can continuously be refreshed and regenerated in combat rather than occurring once. It has 5 more AD. It does not have attack speed. It has significantly more lifesteal, right? So just imagine like when this was 180 up there, how it's quite a lot more competitive with this 250. Right? I think you can understand why that's a big deal on all half-casters, because realistically, the only advantage that Shieldbow had over Bloodthirster was this attack speed. And on top of that, Bloodthirster's on a mythic, so you can still opt into Kraken later. Like, Shieldbow really ended up in this niche where it's only super good on hit champions, because Bloodthirster was choking it out so much. Losing AT shielding early is ridiculous. That is a huge difference in power for a lot of these generalist users, and it's only minus 50 later, which still does matter a lot, but it still is the only defensive item that is viable on curve, excluding shield bow, but that property doesn't change. So what does this mean? Does this mean Bloodthirster Rush is dead now that we're losing basically 80 effective HP on the item? Well, I can't say for sure, and I'd be a little bit surprised if it was, like, dead. Because still, the optimal half-caster users, being Draven, Misfortune, champions like that, I think will continue to get value out of this item despite that higher high, just because they apply the raw lifesteal number so well. What about, like, Caitlyn on second item? Is this competing worse with Infinity Edge? Yes, it is a weaker option relative to Infinity Edge now. I think it's likely that it doesn't win out as universally on second item in that case, right? What about Samira? Because Samira was, like, an incredible Bloodthirster rusher. She has no value out of shield bow relative to this. Well, I mean, Samira did get that reduction to her lifesteal on ultimate, but she is still such a good user of lifesteal. Like, I mean, is it really that crazy to believe that on its best users, this nerf is not enough to devalue Rush Bloodthirster? I don't think so. Found that the 80 buff is meaningful for some champs who really want to all in. Well, let me rephrase then. Bloodthirster is universally higher value over the course of a laning sequence, whereas Immortal Shieldbow has all of its power concentrated into one moment. So even the champions who do want to all in would have overall, over the course of their lane phase, more value out of the Bloodthirster. Well, the passive interaction, but yeah, I know what you mean. Minus 80 is a big swing for durability, right? It is a big swing. It is weaker. But in the context of the itemization system that we've outlined, the conclusion is that this has not fully gone away as a rush on its best users. It has not fully gone away as a second item competing with capstones, and it has certainly not fully gone away as a third item when it's good on everybody, right? It's just there's more of a conversation to be had about, like, whether it's universally best. That's a per champion conversation, and that's too complicated to go fully into in this discussion, right? Because that takes forever to talk about everybody. I will leave you with, though, Misfortune Draven, still excellent rush user. Samira, still arguably a great rush user. Although that one is more up for debate. Aphelios, we can still talk about it. Probably slightly devalued. Even though he's such a good BT user, like, that now we're starting to get into the realm of this champion might stop rushing, like, universally, right? Weaker item, still great item. Yep, let's start talking about Nashor's now. So Nashor's is getting a change, and it's a weird one, right? It's a bit of a weird one. The cost is going up by 200 gold. There's now a Fiendish Codex in its build path, and it grants 15 ability haste. So let's just immediately start. Will this create Nashor's conditions on non-core Nashor's users? Hell no. Absolutely not. That's doing jack shit. I can't put that in my video. If I say that sentence, I cannot put that in the edited version of YouTube. And this change is doing absolutely nothing to make Nashers like actually appealing on the generic mage, right? You're not gaining more Nashers conditions that didn't necessarily exist before. Now, on Nashers users though, Kayle loves haste. Gwen, does she love haste? Like, is this enough to push her back towards Nashers over stuff like Shadowflame, pure burst Qs? That's a conversation. I'm not qualified to answer it. It's kind of interesting. Does Twitch care? No, this is actually bad for AP Twitch. This nerfs Twitch, right? AP Varus likes haste. Yes, Gwen does like haste on her E. Gwen would be trading greater stickiness for Nashers in turn, like off for significantly worse burst, right? Twitch gets the RCD, I guess. Like, but, I mean, you're paying 200 gold more. I mean, it's still the item you have to build. It's just you don't like spending 200 gold more for the 15 haste on support budget when that's not really a big deal or your reason for being on Twitch. So ultimately, it does kind of boil down to a nerf for AP Twitch, which is already starting to struggle in support role because it's such a pure aggro strat now. This makes it harder to play out your pure aggro. Yeah, that's bad for Twitch. That's very bad for Twitch. Haste boots? Well, I wouldn't. Is 15 haste not really good at a price of 200 gold? Yes, but if you don't value that haste and you have low income, that sucks. On mid-Twitch, I agree with the mid-Twitch. I think mid-Twitch is happy with this. Wait, do I agree with that? I don't agree that mid-Twitch is, like, happy with this, but I would just argue that mid-Twitch is probably pretty neutral on this, right? Who else do we have? There's some funny Mordekaiser moments if you want to play pure damage builds. And pure damage builds in the IBS level can be very funny. Now, Azir still needs his penetration to really pop off, right? So I'm not sure this makes Azir, like, super Nashers oriented. I mean, it's definitely better for him than it was before. We'll see how that pans out. The obvious answer to this is Kayle's the big winner. Gwen is happy and like has more of a conversation between Nashers and her pen items. Twitch support is unhappy. And nobody else cares. Do you want to argue for Echo? Like, do we want to argue for Diana? We can argue for Echo and Diana a bit. Like, Diana tank builds could value some haste. Could be okay. Like, Nashor's Jack Show, kind of good for Diana, right? AP Varus is a big winner. Yeah, okay, I'll give you AP Varus as a big winner. Kind of based. No, wait, no. It just clicked in my head how right you are. It just clicked in my head how right you are. AP Varus is 100% reliant on his ult cooldown, and now he's gaining haste on his core item. Big deal, actually, for AP Varus. AP Varus is a big winner. I agree completely. Don't forget the other rats, like the Teemo. Yeah, no, I mean, like, if you happen to be going into a Nashor's version of Teemo, yeah. I haven't had to think about Teemo in a long time. Basically just, okay, but here's the deal. Your generic mages, you're not thinking about this at all. You don't care. This won't change. If you play a champion that has historically looked in the direction of Nashers, it's better for you. It is a better item on you. Because if you're building Nashers, then you're clearly not a pen-reliant champion, right? So, you know, I would say it's a good change. The core users are happy with it, and no one else cares, and it doesn't disrupt anything. So, nice. Okay, Navori Quickblades, best performing ADC capstone by a small amount. It's out DPSing Infinity Edge due to resetting auto attack self buffs. They're just going from 15% of the remaining cooldown to 12% of the remaining cooldown. Very, very few champions were choosing between Quickblades and IE on a per-game basis. The only ones who really were like Neela and Zeri, to my knowledge. So, I mean, it slightly weights IE more heavily for those champions. Was Sivir? Did Sivir care? Sivir? I can see Sivir caring. Yeah, I can see Sivir caring. I think you're probably right. %. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we don't have criteria for this because it's an item that it's receiving a very specific nerf that doesn't apply to anything else. But are we really going to be that pressed at losing 3% of a cooldown per auto? Have we ever cared about like effectively 3% CDR? I mean, obviously it's slightly more than that, but it's going to be minor, and we're not really going to change any major decisions, except for, as mentioned, Sivir, Zeri, Neela, who like it's like a very, very optimizy math problem. And you know what? Let's just resolve it as if it's a very optimizy math problem, then it is completely irrelevant for everybody here in like platinum and below amateur play, diamond and below amateur play, frankly. Too mathy to matter for us who have not optimized the game. Right. That's a conclusion. Okay. Legend Bloodline. Bloodline is the most picked ADC rune by far, contributing to ADCs being generically tanky instead of opting into durability when it's needed. It's meant to be a choice. So, they were unhappy with AD carries gaining plus 100 health, and the lifesteal per stack was a little too high. Give me a second. That's the wrong button. I just need to get the actual value that it used to be at max stacks. Oh. Okay, so it's losing 0.75% lifesteal at max stacks, and it's losing 15 HP, which, I mean, that's basically a love tap. So, we're not going to talk about that one. The attack speed on Lethal Tempo for ranged users at early levels is going down. Now, yeah, maxed at level 18, which means we are going to be weaker for... Oh, wait a minute! I need to read. I need reading comprehension in my eyeballs and my brain, because this is a different change. Formerly, Lethal Tempo was maxed at level 12. Now it is maxed at level 18. So this is a very significant attack speed reduction at all levels. It's a big deal. It takes a long time for this to fully come online. Now, you must understand that AD carry itemization is weighted a little too heavily towards AD. And actually, number one Ardent hater right here is actually starting to find a little bit of value in Ardent just because of how little attack speed hyper carries are building with earlier Infinity Edge and stuff like that. So, like, the speed this is providing is a major, major component for their power level. And, like, without that, things get awkward fast in terms of itemization. Like, Berserker Greaves become a lot more mandatory. And then that makes it harder for AD carries to opt into early armor, like, as one of the few classes who actually do value plated steel caps to a degree, right? If we were to see something similar to this on a champion, we would, like, kind of start in the camp of DPS champion receiving a DPS nerf, but then it really sinks in just how substantial that is, gaining 1.6% attack speed per level. And, like, taking such a long time to come. I mean, let's check the level 12 comparison, shall we? At level 12, formerly, you'd have 54% attack speed. Now, at level 12, you have... This part's not updated. Something's wrong here. Yeah, something's not updated properly here. 24 to 54. No, something's wrong here. Okay, I mean, they made it awkward a bit, but... Well, I mean, I suppose this is trying to encourage AD carries to take Alacrity more often than just Bloodline. Like, Alacrity is supposed to be your default, I suppose. That's what they're saying. And I think they'll find it hard to pry Bloodline away from people who, like, AD carries value their marginal lifesteal when they have nothing else. Like, they don't like every point of damage sticking. Let me think. Okay. I have a feeling that this will... Sorry, my hair looks awful. Still looks awful, but at least it's slightly more... It's got a little more volume. I have a feeling that this will meaningfully impact the power level of Phantom Dancer reliant hypercarries. Because we're going to start... I mean, like, they're the most reliant on lethal tempo. Like, other people could, on paper, pivot into... I mean, nobody wants to pivot into Conqueror right now when their builds are so AD heavy. Nobody wants to... Well, I shouldn't say nobody wants to pivot into PTA. People would be very... Like, aggressive, high AD carries would be very happy to pivot into Halo Blades or PTA after, like, this is nerfed. And, like, I don't want to overreact looking at numbers with no way to, like, properly compare the value exactly at 12 because our tables are messed up. And actually, fuck that. I'm doing it manually. Okay. So, yeah, 1.66. 24 plus 1.66 times 11. Okay, so at level 12, we would have 42% attack speed rather than 54% attack speed. So that is a decrease in 12% attack speed, which is a real amount. Okay, so the numbers that I'm getting, the numbers that I'm getting from this imply that we are losing a meaningful amount of attack speed and we are losing some DPS, but we are not losing enough that people are going to hate lethal tempo forever and say this is a bad rune, because it's not. It's just a weaker rune that is still necessary for some champions to play nicely with the current AD heavy itemization for marksman. It's going to weaken Jinx, and Jinx has absolutely popped up this patch as a very dominant amateur level pick. Jinx is absolutely going to be the most impacted. Varus is going to be impacted to a degree, but not, like, severely, because he's getting his attack speed anyway, like, from on hits. The Hob pivots, the yeah, it's really a Jinx hit. It's like predominantly a Jinx hit. A little decrease to Jinx priority, decrease to Xayah priority, decrease to champions like that. If you go to Wiki, well, we just did that and the table's not properly updated. Like, if you go here, it's cranky with me. It's supposed to scale up to level 18, but that's not happening here. Right? Scroll. Same table. Same table, pretty much. It's all broken the same way. I'm out of water. Yep. Okay, I need to, thank you, Hailfire. But by manual calculations, at level 12, what would formerly be the breakpoint, you lose 12% attack speed, which is a meaningful amount, but not meaningful enough to, like, fully kill the rune or kill the playstyle. It's just, like, specifically Jinx and Xayah, off the top of my head, and probably, like, at least one or two others, are a little bit weaker. Like, those who don't like full AD, who tends to like PD, those champions. Okay, we've talked long enough about a change that really did not need that much attention. It was a change that, like, we can just conclude is weaker. No, okay. We have some dragon changes. They are trying to make you take fewer dragons, or, like, prioritize them a little less. Or it's like, we don't care if we give up a single dragon or something. It's okay to play around topside. So did they succeed? Let's find out. Hextech Drake, which is by far the best Drake, is now worth 7.5% A haste and attack speed, which is still a good amount, and we're still happy with that, right? The soul is reduced by 5% slow. Doesn't really matter. Still an excellent slow. I don't foresee any major strategic changes. Infernal Drake losing 1% AD and AP. I mean, like, look, you really start to feel these on the dragon stacking, I suppose. So, like, actual full dragon stacking isn't as good. But, like, the single Drake changes? No. Losing 1% armor and magic resist, I'm not prioritizing a single Mountain Drake differently. We're losing 4% total. I'm absolutely not prioritizing any amount of Mountain Drakes differently. Like, hell no. This is still excellent. And, like, minus 0.5% missing health regen on Ocean Drake, not really. And they're not hitting Chemtech or Cloud Drake, which is good, because those are the less powerful Drakes. It's just equalizing the playing field a little bit, right? What are they actually giving for context? Recent changes to bot lane. So they buffed, 12-14, they buffed the rewards. So yeah, this is actually the buff where I said Dragon aggro should be the meta, and my team at the time was playing, like, entirely ranged supports and, like, Sejuani support, which is, like, the one Dragon aggro melee. And we were winning games a lot on Dragon aggro. And then, lo and behold, half a year later, Marksman supports. Like, woo! Which I never would have predicted. I'm not taking credit for that. I never would have predicted that would happen. But it is along the same lines. Dragon aggro is the best way to play the game. They're trying to disincentivize Dragon aggro from being the best way to play the game. But, like, I'm not making any major strategic changes. It's just a small, like, hey, we're losing the first Drake isn't, like, quite as bad, but it's so minor. Like, it's not. You're never going to see these, like, last two values unless you lost the first two Drakes anyway. So this is technically punishing you for, like, I don't know. It's this also nerfs playing topside technically on these values. So I'm not going to make any strategic changes whatsoever on Drakes. Well, that seems to be everything that matters here. There's a clash. There's the April Fool's stuff happening. There's bystander feedback reports. That's funny. Some small stuff here. Mythic shop rotations. Okay. And there we go. And then awesome skin line and all that. So that's the patch. Honestly, really not a lot happening in this patch, but they did backload the stuff that matters. Like, Vayne matters, Veigar matters, Yuumi matters, BT matters, Lethal Tempo matters. Like, 5 changes that might matter for you and your team, where you might make some slight adjustments, but it's become really apparent to me recently how important comfort is in amateur play. Like, my levels of play study on Platinum was a little bit wrong, and I was severely overestimating our abilities. Like, the abilities of my team, the abilities of my opponents, right? So I just want to take this very low-impact patch to really emphasize that you should not dramatically change what works for you and for your team on a patch-by-patch basis. Because comfort and experience trumps all. So, like, I mean, even, like, this Vayne change would really only matter for you if you have a player who, like, was a big Vayne player and wants to cycle your champ pool now. It's time to cycle, right? Or this Veigar change, like, only really matters if you were, like, flavor of the monthing Veigar, and I don't think you should have been, but if you, like, really are a dedicated Veigar player, you will find ways to deal with this, and you should stick with your champion, because that'll win you more games than overreacting to a nerf, right? So, yeah, for the most part, we don't care about most of what occurred during this patch. It's not a big deal. And Amateur devalues the impact of a lot of these changes anyway. But for the things we do care about, please don't overreact to them strategically. So that's all. That's the patch. That's 13.6. Nice patch. Small patch. Decent patch. We're chilling. I am going to just checking in on something. Very cool. You'll play Vagar support. Hey, I think Vagar support is really giga shit. So that's maybe not do that. Thank you. Well, what's gonna happen, Karibo, is I'm going to like manually cut the recording and start it back up again. Why do I keep trying to drink from my empty water bottle? Gragas support better anyway. Based. I love Gragas support. Does anybody have any questions or any other like little contributions? Because like obviously there's a couple things that I miss periodically. I'm getting a little sloppy on some of these, but my predictions have still been good. So what a tiny patch. Does Mundo become a jungler now? I mean, like you can probably IBS especially, yeah. But like it's a solid meh. This entire change is a solid meh. I mean, like what is he at now? I need to go 13.5. Now, for the record, I severely distrust solo Q stats now, like by a lot. It's 49. Wow. What about his day one? 47. Wow. I mean, like, none of these stats are accurate. It's too early in the patch cycle, so don't trust anything you read at all, right? Trust nothing. Jesus Christ, that's a big... What the fuck? Oh, wait, how many of these are building Ludens? You dumb motherfuckers. Stop it! Bit tragic, innit? Yeah, I don't trust solo Q stats, though. I don't trust them. Oh my god, it's 12%. Her win rate and all rolls went down. Okay, yeah, don't trust any of these. Don't trust. Do not trust. Don't use stats out of context. If you use stats out of context, look, watch this. I'll give you an example, right? If you use stats out of context, then you conclude that on Rel, Radiant Virtue is always best by a significant margin, right? Oh, look, when I finish my Radiant Virtue, I just always win, right? It's only a 2-minute difference, right? This must be the best option. Wrong! This does not factor in the games where Rel got stuck, unable to complete her items. And so where she would have had Locket and been able to salvage the game, she would not have been able to do so with Radiant, and we don't get to see the numbers. This is survivorship bias. We're close enough to that. There's so many bad stats out here if you don't know how to use them. And I'm not amazing at using them, so I tend to distrust them until I can really sit down and study. So, Lolalytics is an amazing, amazing resource, but please don't look at win rates and use them to make your case. Just use them if it's like something's like abnormally higher. Like, I wonder what that means. But don't conclude from it. It's not how statistics work. Yeah, whoa, no boots is better than tier 1 boots. That's crazy, guys. Wow. Just don't build boots, forehead. Yeah. Well, I think we're satisfied with that. I'm gonna get myself some water. Wait, is it 11:22? Oh shit, guys, I might not play lore. I'm not gonna lie. It's getting. Let me think about that. Well, I'm going to end my recording here at least, and I'll leave the stream going for a little bit. We'll decide what to do.